I was genuinely surprised at Civil War because Alex Garland has done some really amazing stuff in the past. It's usually deep into like the science fiction genres. I really like him as a filmmaker and just as a writer overall. This was not really science fiction. This was more like dystopian, sort of. I don't want to say apocalyptic, but definitely I think it's classified as a dystopian thriller film, is what it says here. And it follows a team of journalists as they basically navigate this landscape where there's a civil war being fought in the United States between the secessionist states of Texas and Florida, who have separated out from the rest of the United States, and just the chaos that is going on. And before I dive into my review, I'd like to say that I will, there's no way for me to review this film without diving into some of the identity politics that people have and the way they feel about certain parties and everything else. Anything you've ever heard that is like an extremist viewpoint in terms of gun control or immigration or any of these things, they are hot topics in this film. Also, it shines a light on war journalism and what that looks like and what it does to a person. This is a very dark film. This is not a happy, this is not a nice film. You finish watching it and you feel disturbed. Uh, you need a bath. You need a shower. Like, it was very deep. So before we get going, just disclaimer: it's political. We'll be talking about some of that stuff as we get deeper into this. If you haven't watched the film yet, I highly recommend that you go away and watch it. Chris and I watched this, and she asked me like 6 times during the film, is this really what people think? Is this because she's, coming from the Mexican side of things, she's not aware of all of the cultural aspects of the United States that are present in this film. So without further ado, you've been warned. Spoiler territory ahead. I don't hold back. So let's go. So the general principle here is that Florida and Texas have separated out from the United States, and there's a nasty civil war going on. And it's like in pockets. It's like there are certain areas where the violence is very heavy, and then they're referenced the fact that like the family members of some of the main characters, like one of the main characters, her family lives on a farm in Colorado and like is pretending that none of this is going on. The other character, her family is off living on a farm in Missouri, pretending like none of this is going on. Because really, it's sort of like the West Coast is being affected the most, like the Southwest, and then up the East Coast, not the West Coast, the South and the East, and then up through to Washington, D.C. And while this is all going on, we essentially have the movement where the armies of the secessionist states are moving north to take out the capital and to take out the president. The cast in this film is absolutely phenomenal. Having just seen Devs, I think was the last thing I watched by Alex Garland. It was cool to see Nick Offerman showing up, even though he had just sort of a bit role as like the president of the United States. The takeaway here is obviously Kirsten Dunst as this jaded war journalist, and then the kid who plays. I got to look up who the kid is. Cailee Spaeny is the actress's name, and she plays like this budding journalist who wants to be this famous journalist, but she doesn't realize all the nastiness that comes along with being a war journalist. But part of the journey of this film is her character learning to become a war photographer, a war journalist, and what it means to be upfront and close and personal with all this nastiness. It reminds me a lot of, there was a film that Jake Gyllenhaal did where he was an ambulance chaser and he just got addicted to death. And that's very much at play here. Like, the photographer team, like especially the guys who are the cooperatives, excuse me, like her, what is his name? The character's actor, Wagner Moura. His character's Joel, the Reuters journalist, and he's addicted to like the adrenaline, and he has no problem with any of this, and so are all like these other guys. And so there's an aspect where they really love being in the thick of it, watching people get shot and killed, and it's just really depressing and kind of nasty. But what's really interesting about this is, for me, I've grown up with, for better or worse, I grew up in Missouri, and that led to me being around some extremist people over the years who very much believe in their, God-given rights to have automatic firearms, and the NRA, you can take my gun when you pry it from my cold dead hands, Charlton Heston, and so that's very much at play here in this film, where you have these Florida and Texas, which is ironic because these are two states who have already threatened to leave the United States because they don't agree with the politics of the elected president. And so it's interesting to see what that would look like if it played out in this fashion. Obviously, this is sort of an exaggerated point of view, but is it really? I think one of the most horrific things here is we've already seen this starting to take place where journalists are no longer like used to be. Journalists were respected, and now ever since the last administration and the fake news and all this other stuff, there's now a distrust of journalists, especially from corporate media outlets. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that particular side of things, because we've seen over the years that corporate media outlets are hook, line, and sinker paid for and heavily political in their view. It's very rare to see actual journalism take place these days because most parties are actually, politically aligned one way or the other based on who their owners are and who those owners are contributing campaign donations to. But there is a reference here that the United States government, that what's left of it in Washington, D.C., is killing journalists on site. Like, they have no trust for journalists. They just kill them. Like, we don't want you here. And so this idea, they get it in their head that the idea is here is that they see that Florida and Texas are attacking Washington, D.C. They're sending all their armies. And like Gaddafi and all these guys Mussolini and guys who have fallen before, they fully anticipate that the president is going to fall. And these journalists want to get there first to get the last words of this president on film before he's, taken out of the equation. And no one knows exactly how that's going to end. It doesn't end well. Let's just put it that way. And in the process of this, they pick up this girl who wants to be a journalist, and she starts to learn the tricks of the trade as they go along, and they shoot some horrific scenes and some really violent scenes, and she starts to learn how to get in it. She starts to love it. She starts to get into it. The adrenaline, it's all about the shot. It's all about getting that perfect image of death, and one of the striking scenes to me was he has a bit role, but his scene is so powerful, and I'm gonna have to look it up because I forget his name here. Jesse Plemons, as this racist, as this is how he's described, a racist ultra-nationalist militant. He was not credited in the film, which was interesting, but he's all over social media and the clip is everywhere. But it's basically him holding them at gunpoint, and they have some journalist of Asian descent, and he's questioning them like, where are you from? And they're like, we're Americans. He's like, no, what type of Americans are you? Where do you come from? And the one guy says he's from Florida, and he just shoots the guy on sight. And the other guy is like, where are you from? And he's like, Hong Kong. He shoots him on sight. And then he gives this diatribe about, oh, you're from Colorado. You're one of the Americans. You're good. And it's just, we've seen these radical. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload, or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. We've seen these ultra-nationalist people crop up who can't stand anyone who's brown or from another country. They've never had a passport. They've never traveled. They believe hook, line, and sinker this whole, malarkey that refugees are bad and immigrants are bad. And so there's some really difficult political messaging in this film if you can't handle having adult conversations about things. So it was tricky to navigate that, but they did it in a very, very good job. Very well done. I think the kicker for me, though, was at the end when they realized that these secessionist states have their military is kicking ass, and they make it all the way to the White House. And in the process of storming the White House, Kirsten Dunst's character, the younger character, is like taking camera shots and jumps out in the middle of the action, and in order to save her life, Kirsten Dunst's character jumps in the way to shove her out, and the girl falls back and starts shooting. She's still shooting, and as she's shooting, she sees Kirsten Dunst's character fall forward to her and basically gets shot in the head, and she gets all that captured on film. And then as this is happening, her previous partner, played by Wagner, his whole motivation is to get the president's last words, and that's all that matters, is that ultimate shot, the ultimate thing. And so he just my companion's dead, no big deal, picks up the girl and says, we gotta go, we gotta get this shot. And they get there right as the soldiers are taking out the president and they're getting ready to execute him. And he's like, wait, wait. And he gets down on his knees and he's like, any last words? And the guy's like, please don't let them kill me. And he's like, that'll do. And then they just execute him and she gets it all on camera. And that's sort of like how the film ends. And you're just left with this really sour taste in your mouth of like, this is totally something that could happen if we don't fix the radical ultra-nationalist and point of views where people can't even be friends anymore if they're from different political parties. It's really ridiculous the way things are these days. Very, very political film, very good film. Love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. We'll see you in the next one, everybody. Stay safe. Happy viewing.